welcome to Virtual Investor Conferences. I am Scott Powell, President and Chief Executive Officer of Skyline Corporate Communications Group, LLC. On behalf of OTC Markets and Skyline Corporate Communications Group, we are very pleased to have you join us for the Small Cap Growth Conference. The next presentation is from Meritage Hospitality Group, Incorporated. Please note you may submit questions for the presenter at any time. You can also view a company's availability for one-on-one meetings by clicking Book a Meeting. At this point, I am very pleased to welcome Mr. Bob Schermer, Chief Executive Officer of Meritage Hospitality Group, Incorporated, which trades on the OTCQX Best Market under the ticker symbol MHGU and MHGUP. Welcome back, Bob.
And thank you for your interest today in joining the Meritage Hospitality Group Business Update. We are a 317-unit Wendys franchisee, so today we're going to be talking a lot about Wendys and what is going on at Wendys. I'd like to begin with just a quick safe harbor statement, and this can be found on our website at www.meritagehospitalitygroup.com. Beginning with consumer sentiment. You know, this is a very unusual period. It's really been going on for about the last 18 months in terms of the U.S. consumer. We've got a war, we've got tariffs, we've got inflation. All these things, you know, the headlines are nonstop about what's bad in the economy, but at the end of the day, people are still eating. And it's very evident by the numbers that have been posted in the QSR segment in the first quarter of the year. McDonald's was up 3.9%. Burger King was up 5.5%. Taco Bell, which has an incredible 10-year run of same-store sale comps, was up 8%. Yet Wendys was down 7.8%. So what's going on at Wendys? Where is it in the cycle? These businesses always go through cycles. They have historically over the last 50 or 60 years. This time is no different, and Wendys is certainly at the bottom of the cycle and just beginning to come out. This particular cycle for Wendys began about 36 months ago when the then CEO cut about $86 million of G&A out of the business, out of the brand. And the two big things that affected us as franchisees in this were franchisee field support was all but eliminated. And they really took the research and development department at the brand down to a skeleton crew. And the so what of that is that is where all of the food innovation comes from at the brand. And food innovation and marketing are the heartbeat of the industry that we're in. Following that, the next CEO who came in, gentleman by the name of Kirk Tanner, joined in the beginning of 2024. Kirk was outside of the industry. He worked at Pepsi in the packaged goods, and he joined the business, was there for about 15 months and departed. And it was a little rough in the transition. We're going to talk a little bit about what happened to the security of them and us over the last 60 months, in particular the last 12 months. It's been extremely harsh. Wendys is down over that 60-month period, 67%. Meritage, the franchisee, is down, what I would say is an incredible 92%, while at the same time, McDonald's is up 22%. So McDonald's has maintained or grown during the last 60 months, where Wendys, the brand, and Meritage as a franchisee are down. The team at Wendys just announced within the last week, 10 days, a new CEO by the name of Bob Wright. Bob Wright is an old-time friend of ours here at Meritage Hospitality. We have known Bob for the last decade and worked with him in his prior career at Wendys. We are extremely excited that Bob is back to join the senior leadership team at Wendys. He's got some great other folks there. And Pete Serkin and Ken Cook, the CFO. Pete Serkin is the new President and Chief Operating Officer. So as far as the franchise community is concerned, we are elated. with these moves. We think they're going to be extremely beneficial going forward. This is just one clip from one analyst on Wall Street. Number one job is fix franchisee profitability. And as a large franchisee, of course, that rings to our ear, very, very positive. And I think he'll do it. The brand has gone through a lot. And in the last 12 months, an extreme, for us, I would consider it a black swan event within the Wendys system. Last year, our store level EBITDA in the business was almost cut in half. It was down 48%. It was very dramatic. And, no doubt led to the Kurt Tanner leaving the business. He was, I think, very frustrated. He had no new products to promote, market, and he really resorted to discounting, deep discounting. And in this business, the franchisees pay for the discounting, not the franchisor, other than the stores they own and operate, which is about 5% of the system. So they're certainly in it, but 95% of those discounts are paid for by franchisees like ourselves. So, Mark Kalinowski last week reported, a Wall Street analyst reported that as many as 9 of 10 of the U.S. franchisees have defaulted on financial covenants. Well, that is just a speculation on Mark's part. Only Wendys would have that data, and that is not public data. But, Mark is just making a conjecture here based on, what he sees. And it's not an unreasonable guess, but it is a guess. What Kent Cook, who was the interim CEO, and Pete Serkin did last year in the fourth quarter, once we started to see this dramatic decrease in store level profitability, is they came up with a major structural change for the organization, for the franchisees and the brand together, called Project Fresh. And it was really just rolled out in 2026. Number one, brand revitalization, operations, and system optimization, which I'm going to speak to all 3 of those because they're very dramatic changes that they've instituted to assist the franchise community. And they're making huge impacts. First is brand revitalization. They went and hired Greg Creed. To those that are not familiar with our industry, the QSR industry, Greg Creed is a bit of a legend. He was the chief marketing officer at Taco Bell and the one responsible for putting in place this entire framework of product development and marketing at Taco Bell, which is, as I mentioned earlier, has had a phenomenal run. It's been over a decade of same-store sales comps up. Taco Bell's introduced a new product on average every 6 to 8 weeks for the last decade. I mean, it's truly amazing, the work that they have done there. Greg then went on to become the CEO of Yum, which is the parent that owns Taco Bell. And upon his retirement, he formed Creed & Co., which is a marketing service that comes in and assists brands like Wendys in how to rethink about and re-engage customers in the brands. And just as a disclaimer, one of the partners in Creed & Co., his name is Chris Armbruster, lower right-hand corner here, is a board member of Meritage Hospitality. So I just want to make sure that we have full disclosure on that. We're very excited about the work that they are doing, and we're really going to see that in the brand in the 3rd and 4th quarter of this year. So we're into the 2nd quarter. We expect to see Creed & Co. work again in the 3rd or 4th quarter. The other major structural changes that they've made under Project Fresh is, number one, store closures. It sounds counterintuitive, but for the last 15 years, Wendys has not allowed franchisees to close money-losing stores unless they replaced it with a new restaurant. So it was a one-for-one policy. Few, if any, others in the industry have had that policy in place, but Wendys did. And these guys came in and made a major structural change in 2026 in allowing franchisees to close money-losing restaurants in the brand. It's not as bad as it sounds, and it always puts a negative framework on it, but actually it's just a healthy pruning that every other brand does every year. We're just playing catch up for the last 15 years here at Meritage. Instead of closing 3 or 4 stores a year, which we normally would, our very bottom percentage of stores, and we replace that with good stores on the top, right? That's kind of retail 101. But so this year we're doing a major lift on it, and that's going to add between that and breakfast adjustments, $11.2 million of EBITDA to our business going forward. And then if you take into account structural changes that we have made internally, just adjusting everything to where the business is today, we believe there's $18.5 million of EBITDA benefits on a go-forward basis, 27, 28, 29 forward. So we've done a big lift here this year in the first and second quarter of the year. We really pay for it in 26. We get the benefits on a go-forward in 27 and beyond. So first quarter of the year, we started to see major cash benefits coming back into the business. Our cash position increased 68% between the fourth quarter last year and the end of the first quarter this year. So that's certainly a good trajectory for us. You know, and if we just look at what is the outlook of the business on a go-forward basis, we are going to certainly have fewer locations, but much higher profitability in those remaining locations. And that's for a number of different reasons. So for 2026, we look to have between 520 and 530 million in sales. We're looking for restaurant operating income to be between $35 and $40 million, which on an adjusted basis for EBITDA, that's a growth over 2025 of between 45 and 55%. So a lot of moving parts in the year in 2026, very much settles down in 2027. This is how we see our 5 years sales when we look at all of the adjustments that we've made in 2026 into 2027. So 2027, 514 million in sales with the final reduction in store closures that we experienced in 2026. And then we begin to build back as we go forward. The other, and I like to say this is the most important image that I have in this deck, and that is, what does our consolidated four-wall EBITDA look like? And, you know, if I could just point out again, in 2024 to 2025, we literally got cut in half. We went from 67 million in store-level EBITDA to 36 million, 36.1 million EBITDA. You know, we call that the trough. We hit the bottom. That was a black swan event for us. We're coming out of it right now, and I think as the Creed work begins to take effect in the third and fourth quarter of the year, and all of the structural changes that Wendys has made for its franchisees, and that we as the franchisee have taken advantage of and really putting our shoulders to, we see dramatic improvements coming back on a go-forward basis, beginning in 27 and carrying through into 28. So we're excited about it, but we do have to get through it. When we look at our industry, in particular the franchisees, where they trade, we look at an enterprise value to EBITDA, and it's a multiple that we describe, a ratio. This is the history of it over the last 10 years. So the ratio midpoint for the trading of franchisees has been 6.3 times. Peak was 8 times. Trough at the very, very bottom of COVID was 4.5 times. You know, this is just an industry metric on a go-forward basis. They're looking for the forecast to be 8.5%. To be conservative, we like to use 6. That's historically a number that we use, and again, that's restaurant level EBITDA. So if we look at the enterprise value of the business coming out of the trough, we see a very dramatic climb back out from 122 million to 221 million in 2027. Really, for all those reasons I just described, in the structural changes that Wendys has made available to its franchisees, as well as the new products and marketing and development at Wendys. So there's a lot going on in the Wendys system that we are taking advantage of, and that we are able to take advantage of as a franchisee. And then obviously there's external pieces, such as product development and marketing, that we do rely on the brand for. And the brand has a tremendous amount of things in R&D right now. We really don't include those in our goal forward. These are more derived from structural changes that we have made in the business that Wendys has made available to us. And again, we've taken full advantage of. So very exciting for us. We have a very clear path to our growth in EBITDA and what I believe is a value recapture. And I would just drop to the bottom because I know you can read this image yourself, but this is a very highly opportunistic situation. The fall in the fourth quarter of last year was extreme, dramatic in the security. And I think the rebound will be once Wendys settles in and you can begin to see the structural changes take effect in our business. We think that will come back just as dramatically. It always takes a little longer to go up than it does to go down. I mean, we completely understand that. You know, the investor mentality today is, you know, sell first, ask questions later. And we respect that and understand that. And we know we have a lot of work to recapture all of that, but the heavy lift is on. So I have a high degree of confidence in our ability to deliver. And again, I think it's a highly opportunistic situation. So with that, I will turn it over to questions. Here's one question. The company talked about a Wendys reset changing everything. What is the one data point internally that gives you the most conviction that the reset is really working? Well, I would go back to what I just spoke of in terms of the structural that Wendys has made available to franchisees, but are really up to the franchisees to make the changes in themselves internally. Store closures sounds like easy work. It's very, very challenging work. If I'm going to close 60 restaurants, that's 60 different landlord negotiations I need to entail. It's complicated and it's a lot of work debranding these restaurants, but it is ultimately the right thing to do because when you close a restaurant, and particularly if it's a money-losing restaurant, number one, you save the loss. That's obvious. But the less obvious is we see anywhere from 10 to 20% of those sales in most of those closures transfer to a neighboring Wendys restaurant. So we see a tremendous amount of sales transfers that benefits the surviving restaurants, which tend to be the higher volume restaurants. So the flow through for those is very, very good and has proven to be increases your margins to the remaining restaurants. So that is good. Will we consider buying back stock at these levels before you bring back a dividend? First, we have to get out of lender forbearance, get our covenants straight. And then, you know, everything is on the table. First things first, we have to repay any of the outstanding preferred stock dividends. They are cumulative and require that the company pays those back first before any common stock dividends are issued in the business. Here's another question. With Wendys rolling out Project Fresh at the brand level, how well positioned is Meritage to be an early winner from that system-wide refresh? Well, we are, I would say, at the leading edge of that curve. We have implemented, they have another performance management tool that was brought out in terms of operations that we adopted in the fourth quarter of last year. We've seen significant benefits to that performance management cycle. And it really goes and speaks to what happened in the field some 24, 36 months ago when Wendys removed a lot of the field support to franchisees. You know, we would have turnover at the district level. District manager would typically for us operate between 6 and 7 restaurants. And at the general manager level, which obviously they operate 1 restaurant, but when those people would turn over, we would lose a lot of what we call institutional knowledge about the brand and the processes of management at the brand that were formerly reinforced by the field management of Wendys. And when Wendys cut the field management, we saw a lot of dilution in that. And this project performance management cycle that we are using, that Wendys has developed and rolling back out to its franchisees is powerful. And I think it's going to be a fantastic tool, and I'm encouraging all of our other fellow franchisees to do the same. It's really really been eye-opening for us. Another question. Let's see. You have nearly no market capitalization. Can you tell anyone excited about the operational turnaround at Wendys, but fearful bankruptcy is for stakeholders? How would you respond to that? Well, bankruptcy is the last option that someone like myself wants to be in. I'm a large investor in this business myself. I have been for 28 years and continue to be an investor in this business. I would rather do a whole lot of things than that, and that is not one on my list. So let's see. What gives you confidence in your debt refinancing efforts? No, that's a great question. I mean, the market obviously will weigh this business for where it is, and it will evaluate the Wendys brand for where it is. I'm confident that we will get a refinancing done. We have a lot of good banks that are also currently in our bank syndicate. So between the existing lenders we have and the ability to attract new, I'm confident that we will be in a position to accomplish that. But these things change daily, right? There's new news out every single day. So until you've completed a debt refinancing, you have not completed a debt refinancing. Don't want to count our chickens before they hatch, but I've had 28 years of consistently getting our financing refinanced. So I'm confident that we'll end up getting this one refinanced as well. Another question, what are we seeing in the biggest early benefits from cost and efficiencies at work at the restaurant level, food, labor, and utilities? I'm going to read that one again. Where are you seeing the biggest earlier benefits from cost and efficiency work at the restaurant level, labor, food, or utilities? We're seeing tremendous stability on the labor side, which post-COVID, we went through the opposite. We went through a very dramatic period of time where the great resignation was going on, and we saw tremendous turnover in 22, 23 coming out of COVID. And we have seen the opposite effect take hold here. We've seen stability in our restaurant general managers and district managers and up. So I think that's a very encouraging sign because that brings that institutional knowledge back. And I think they have today better tools than we've ever had in the Wendys business. So I'm highly encouraged by that as we go forward. The food is required that we purchase through our supply chain at Wendys, which is 95% owned by franchisees, 5% owned by Wendys, the brand. Their job is to deliver the packaged goods, foods, and paper products to the back door for the best price, the most efficient price possible. That is the mandate of the supply chain. And, they work hard every day to make sure that that's what we're able to do. Wendys is in charge of the specifications on what those product specs are. So between the supply chain and Wendys, there is literally daily communications to make sure that we're doing the best. Wendys is a quality brand, and that quality is very evident in the quality of the food products and the specs. So, Wendys, again, is in charge of that. Another question is, what key metric would you like investors to track on a quarter basis to validate the thesis? I think that's a great question. That there's many metrics. I think really 2026 is a major reset for us with all the closures and all the expense of all the closures on a go-forward basis. I really think it's restaurant level income and or just consolidated EBITDA. I think those are great metrics. Same-store sales we report quarterly as well. And I think as you see the Wendys brand beginning to turn, that flows through in spades to franchisees. And if you go back and look at the last 15 years of our company, our stock performance versus Wendys stock performance, you'll see over that period of time, we have significantly, up until 2025, significantly outperformed the brand on the franchisee side. But things have to be aligned, right? Wendys has to be doing what it needs to do in terms of product innovation and marketing, and we need to be doing what we need to do, managing the four walls of the business. And when those two things come together, the franchisee is a strong business model. Again, I don't want to point fingers, lots of excuses. You can blame me, I'm the CEO. What's gone on over the last 3 or 4 years in the business, but I do think there's a major reset that Wendys has provided the opportunities and the tools to the franchisees to use, and we fully intend to use it. So another question, Given the macro noise around war, tariffs, and inflation, are you starting to see any signs the value messaging from Wendys is bringing guests back more consistently? That's a great question. I think, we have a new promotion coming out in a week, which is with Minions, which is a Universal movie. It's a kids movie. It's called Minions and Monsters. I mean, I think it's a great test here in the next couple of weeks how Minions and Monsters performs with Wendys. We're doing, it's a big push to bring families back into the four walls of the restaurant. My personal feeling is it's going to be immensely successful. I'll keep my fingers crossed. I know that our business is set up for it, and we expect to win with it. But, we'll let the consumer tell us, right? I think it's always a challenge out there in terms of discounting. I mean, last year we went to the extreme in discounting. Typically in Wendys, we see our discounting, and it's run on the app. So it's truly controlled by Wendys through the IT department in Dublin, Ohio. Last year, we saw just an extreme spike before Mr. Canner resigned. We saw the discounting go as high as 6.5% of our sales, which, the norm is about 2.5%. So that 4% difference was dramatic. I am really running out of time here, but I would encourage anyone who's interested, please send me an email and I will respond to you. My email address is Schermer. I'm going to put it up here on the screen. Schermer at MHGI.net. Schermer spelled SCHERMER. And thank you very much for your attendance today. We appreciate it. And I am available and will make myself available for questions. Thank you very much.